Here before me is a early 1980s Ford multifunction switch. This is the, well, like I said, multifunction switch, and this is the one that has the horn on it. You can see the silk screen on the end there is been wearing away, but it does have the horn. So it has the horn, turn signals, high beam, low beam selector, and then on the bottom it has the hazard lights feature. These fail time to time, and in my EXPs they all fail quite commonly. These stocks, I'm not sure if they're still available. Any available replacements. I'm not sure what's out there, but I imagine they're kind of hard to find because they have the horn decal on the end, or they're supposed to be, but they wipe off over time. Because the silk screening print that they use isn't all that hardy. It wipes off pretty easy just with hand oil. But all the functions are follow. You touch the end of the stock and you press it in. That's what activates your horn, is you pressing the stock into the steering column. And then, of course, down is left signal, up is right. And then you, like it says, it's pull for high beams. And then down here, you pull this plastic guy out, and then you get your hazard lights. Push it back in, they turn off again. Pretty simple. But how it does all this is pretty complex. But I wanted to show you how these fail, the different ways they can fail. These stocks usually don't have much for problems. They're all supposed to be bent like this. So if yours isn't bent like that or bent worse, you might have some issues there. But like I said, I'm not sure of what places might carry the stock. They're quite the commodity, so I never throw them away. Usually when you order a switch, you just get the whole new unit itself, and then you have to reuse your stock. It's pretty easy to remove. It's best to do when while it's attached to the car. All you have to do is just slide it straight out. It won't fight you too much, especially if your switch is broken in the way that this one is. But you can see that that's how they shape this. So that little tab there fits the keyway. And then they cut a notch here, and that takes a little, like a pin or a pin or a plate or something like that, that just sits inside that notch. So it allows this to go in and out that 1/4 of an inch, no more. But to pull out, just give it a hard tug while you press this in to the switch. So use this for leverage. Push here, pull your stock out. Not too hard. So that's off to the side now. And then the switch is pretty interesting. You can disassemble it simply by removing these 4 Torx head screws. Once you do that, it simply pulls apart like that. And on the back side here, you can see all the copper traces, the switch contacts. And that's all just for the wipers. Or, I'm sorry, not the wipers, the turn signals. All that's just for the turn signals. And I believe that is the one for the high beams. Yes. And then this is the other side. So they clamshell like that. They pull apart, no problem. And this is the assembly that the stock pushes into. See here, it's sheared off. It's a fairly common occurrence. It's just, cheap pot metal. Just part of the casting. But, whenever it's kind of stuff, they will eventually break. What doesn't help is that they make them so thin, and then you can see, maybe not from that angle, but from this angle you can see that they have a little sprung plunger in here that kind of spreads these two sides apart. That's why they're swollen like this. They're supposed to be perfectly flat, but they're swollen. So, oh yeah, and then you can have issues with this pin. This pin had actually broken the housing right here. See that crack there? Because I started driving it last year. I never had any issues until last year. I was driving down the road. I tried using my high beams just once, and I guess this guy had snapped. So my high beams were on, and with this being out of the casting, or at least cocked at a bad angle, I could not trigger this lever. Because when you push the stock in for your high beams, or when you pull it towards you for your high beams, it moves the switch in and out. And that's what spins this sled here. So it does that. Pretty clever. And then that, of course, just transfers straight onto those contact patches. But with that pin broken, you can move this lever back and forth. So then it was stuck on high beams, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. It's just high beams were always on. The other issue I had was this thing was always kind of sloppy. It has been like that ever since I took over ownership. But it was mostly from that casting breaking, that pot metal, the two silver beams on the side. It was that breaking that made my rod kind of flimsy. You know, it's supposed to hang perfectly perpendicular to the steering column. If it sags down, half an inch to an inch, usually this casting is dying. And when you move it back and forth, if it really struggles to click, like you move it up all the way and it's just barely clicking, this guy is pretty much toast. I can almost guarantee that. It's just worn out, broken, whatever. But what doesn't help is that, of course, is hooked. Sorry, it's not hooked. It's all one cast piece. So this guy here is casted onto this. That's the same piece as that turning cylinder. So if that seizes up for any reason, you'll also break the two uprights of this casting, which causes issues, of course. So if you use your blinker once, and now you can't even hear the click of you trying to change your blinker direction or just turn them on or off, assume that is toast. Now replacements of these are pretty affordable. You can get the entire switch for about $30, but sometimes if you're having issues with it and it's not a physical issue, it's not like this guy is dangling and now it doesn't even reach the switch triggers, but you're having issues electrically, you can actually take it apart like I showed you, and you can clean up all these contacts. I haven't done anything to these. These are the factory contacts, and as they wear too. So from the factory they put some grease on these suckers and it cakes up bad. It's kind of to prevent these from oxidizing, but it fails. It fails because you can see that grease is turning brown and green. And the issue is that grease, over 40 years, of course, it doesn't lubricate anymore. It turns into a hard non-conductive surface, making it so that none of these contact sleds actually contact anything. Makes it a pain. So you would take some like 800 grit, 1000 grit sandpaper, just give this all a quick wipe over with just your finger. Make it nice shiny copper again, and you'll be all set. So that's one thing you do. But aside from that, that's all you can do to try to fix these guys. Luckily, the hazard thing doesn't ever wear out. It's in there pretty good. I can't even get access to it without prying this apart. But it's not important. I have yet to see one fail. Yeah, here's the contact sleds for the blinkers. It's pretty wild. When you turn the stock, it pivots the sled one way or another. There we go, there's a good angle for you. So it does that. And then there's this little knuckle here that pokes out. That goes straight to your steering wheel. So when you turn your signal on and you make a right hand turn, this is the auto off. This will ratchet one way or the other. And then to disable this. When these move over all the way as they're supposed to, this little gray tooth is supposed to end up inside one of those two light gray notches. But with that casting broken, the casting that pivots, with that casting broken, it will never do that. It'll never reach. Oh, there we go. It does it just barely, but it will always try to pop out, creating more issues. And then once you do that, this guy becomes the auto off where it's supposed to be. Turning it one way or the other, it's supposed to retract that that gray little tooth, and then this thing will slide back to its natural resting spot. So it's pretty ingenious how they do this, but due to 1980s technology, there are some common wear spots that wear out horribly. Otherwise, not too crazy. And I believe these were ran all the way from 79 to 83. Those are the years they had the horn on the end. So 79 to 83, Ford Mustangs, EXPs, Escorts, Granadas, Fairmonts, Broncos, other pickups. Almost every Ford under the sun had these guys in them until 83. And 83 came up, they removed the horn from the stock, so then this only did the signals and the high beam, and then of course the hazards were still down below. And that carried on from 84 to 89, I believe. And then 1990 was an odd year for Escorts, at least. They had a unique switch for the time. But yeah, that's kind of how these are. Remember, don't throw away your stock. And with these guys, you can hold on to them if you want. You can't really fix that pot metal. You can't really weld it. JB weld doesn't work because JB weld doesn't hold up to torque at all. Epoxy might work, but if it broke once, it'll break again. And if you don't lubricate this side where it spins, you'll always have issues. So it's just best to replace these. This video is not a rebuild, a how-to rebuild video. It's just a illustration of what goes on in these. I've never really seen any failures except for this, and this is always what causes the sloppy stock. So remember, if this is hanging down half an inch to a full inch, it's wearing out, and someday it will die on you. And when it does, it'll be extremely aggravating. You won't have your turn signals or your high beams, or you'll have them and you can't turn them off. That was the issue I had. I used the left-hand turns. I made a left-hand turn and it blinked just fine. But when I tried pulling it back up to turn it off, but my left turn signal would not turn off. So going down the road, I bopped it up a whole bunch of times, and then my left's finally turned off, but then my right's turned on. And then somehow my high beams turned on, and I couldn't get any of those to turn off. So I turned the car off, turned it back on, and my right hand signals actually finally turned off with some futzing around, but my high beams never did. So I came home with my high beams on, with no good way of turning them off, so I had to take the battery out. So something to be cautious about. If this is getting goofy, take care of it right away. Like I said, these are only $35-ish, and they got a million variations of these. Some come with flash to pass. I'm not too familiar with it because all my cars are just this. But some are flash to pass. Some have different. Like I said, some don't have the horn features. Some do. And anything after 84, 1984 up will not have the horn on it. Guarantee it. There were some other features I can't remember. Maybe it was hazard lights. Not sure, but there's a million of these to look out for, and they're all interchangeable from what I know. Just know that the electrical contacts on the back might be a little different depending on which version of this you get. These are all kind of set in stone. What's inside of these will always be that. But the shape of the connectors might vary. I'm not sure. I haven't had enough of these apart. All my cars are 82 to 84, so they all look like this. Anyhow, we've kind of made the video as long as it needs to be. So we'll call it quits. Remember to use dielectric grease whenever you can, inside and out, on all electrical connectors, even on these guys. If yours is not worn out yet, it's a good idea to just lube it up to keep it from doing that. That's real easy to do. Just take it apart like I showed you, the four screws, and then you naturally pop the sled out. It's kind of finicky because of the springs, but you can pull that out completely. You can lube up everything, and then it shouldn't ever break on you, or at least it won't break for the next 40 years. But don't quote me on that. A lot of these live a hard life, so no promises. But we'll leave it at that, and happy trails.